Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting brought to you by Downtown Gun Rapids, Inc. We will begin shortly. Please keep your sound on, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to bring to order this Downtown Development Authority Board Member Meeting, Wednesday, March 8th, 2023 at 8:31. First order of business is the approval of the February 8th minutes. Are there any corrections or comments? All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Maybe I should go slower. We have an easier agenda today. All right.
You're in charge.
Okay. Next, Winter Avenue redesign. Mr. Financials. See? That's what happens when you're trying to slow down. First are the financials for February 2023.
Hi,
Good morning.
Everyone. Your statements as of February 28, 2023 are in your packet. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has anything. There wasn't necessarily anything notable that happened in February. Your list of expenditures are on Statement D, and I would ask for approval for that.
I move approval. Thank you. Support. All right. Any questions regarding the statements? I did not have any either. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we go to Winter Avenue redesign. The fun stuff.
Yeah, good morning. So let me move on. Okay, so I've got some images to help, and these were in your packet as well. So this is a project that really aligns pretty well with many of our planning documents. GR Forward obviously talks a great deal about stress-free pedestrian experiences along our streets and creating better connections, safer connections for pedestrians. The DGRI Streetscape Guidelines, or Street Space Guidelines, sorry, talk about rebalancing streets and optimizing people space, and also that safe connection and safe experience. And then in addition to that, those guidelines go into the idea of creating pilot projects that begin to test out some of these things in a low impact way, in a low cost way, and then moving toward more of a permanent infrastructure investment on those pilot programs. So with all of that said, in May of 2020, if you remember, we did a lot of COVID-related changes to our streets. This was one of them. This is at the corner of Bridge and Winter Avenue. You can see it in the upper right corner where we bulbed out that street fairly significantly, turned it into a one-way street, and did a lot of outdoor seating there. That seating lasted until a few months ago when we started to dismantle it, and we're removing it now, returning that street to its normal function. And then last summer, as we started to talk about the evaluation of this program and working with some of the adjacent business owners, a contingent of city staff and DGRI and those business owners met out on the site and talked about what we could do next with this. That group included folks from Mobile GR as well as the city engineering department. And so what we've talked about and worked through in these months since last summer is a plan to design this in such a way that widens the sidewalk, not quite as extensively as you see in that upper image, but definitely widening it to create some additional pedestrian space and potentially seating space adjacent to O'Toole's. And then also looking at that crosswalk at Bridge Street that goes north-south, and you can see it down in the lower right-hand corner. Right now, there are curb dub downs there, but it is not really marked, and it is a place where a great deal of people do cross. It's one of the few crossings along that street. So we want to be able to make that a little bit safer and more predictable for pedestrians. So part of this project will be looking at that and putting in rapid flashing beacons at that location. So what this amounts to today is that through the engineering department, we have worked through a plan to start to implement this, and they've given us an estimate for what that work would be. That's in your packet. So there's obviously three components of that. There's the engineering design and the public engagement, which is what we're really talking about today. That would lead to ultimately construction and then the construction phase services that would go along with that. So those are the three line items in that budget breakdown in your memo. And so today we're just talking about the engineering design and the public engagement portion to start this project. And that equates to $37,500. And that includes a 12% contingency. So that work does have some contingency in it simply because we don't quite know where those costs will be as we move forward. So this is a not to exceed ask for that funding. And then so what that leads us to then is doing the design. That work is expected to take about 4 months. The bidding would take approximately a month, and then we would anticipate that construction would take about 2 months. So this is a project that can be completed within this year. But again, we're only asking at this point in time for the engineering design cost and not the actual construction cost. We'll take bids. We'll evaluate where those numbers are, and we may come back to you to ask for some funding for that construction work. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
Any feedback from the property owners there in terms of their perspective on this?
Yeah, so we've worked pretty closely with, in particular, the folks that own Butchers Union and O'Toole's, because this was their seating area. And as it turns out, O'Toole's is actually planning, as this work goes, when this gets improved, to make some investments in the O'Toole's property, especially the west side of it, to open that up. I think that what they're planning to do there is probably put in some garage doors that allow that area to spill out into the sidewalk. So they are following this closely to determine some of their investments in the future. Anyone else?
Any comments from Mobile GR? No. Do we have a second? All right. Any other comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So now we'll move to budget discussion. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Since we got you out of bed and had you here, we didn't want to just keep you for 10 minutes. So wanted to just set the table and have a little bit of discussion about the FY24 budget. Nothing for you to do on it today, but just kind of wanted to set up the conversation that we will be having next month. And really just to get any questions that you have and see if there's any additional information we can provide as we go into that. So Quick reminder on process and schedule. We're in the conversation phase of this schedule, so talking obviously with the board, but also with our alliances and other committees to gather input and feedback. We'll be before you in April, seeking a recommendation to go to the City Commission in May, and we'll be doing that with some of the other city authorities and improvement districts. The request will be to approve a one-year budget, but I think as most of you are aware, we do present it as a 5-year priority plan just to give you a sense of where things may be heading. We continue to work on the implementation of our plan, our 10-year plan. So in December of this year, we'll be 8 years into GR Forward, so still some work to do. But we're about 75% complete with the goals and priorities that were laid out for DGRI to own and manage. And as you can imagine, what's left is some of the trickier ones, or more difficult. But work continues on the plan. What we're expecting to show is hopefully no surprise. I think a lot of these projects we've been talking about over the past few months, if not years, continuing with some of our capital priorities, which would include Lions Square, which we hope to have out to bid here in the next month or two. And then also looking at some of the other capital projects that have been before you previously. So River Connections Plan, Van Andel Arena Alley. A couple to put on your radar as well that we're talking through would be the amphitheater. So the Riverfront Amphitheater that we expect the DDA to play a part of. Want to understand our role in that better. Also the Grand River Greenway work that's happening through the Grand River Network that DGRI is helping to administer. A number of riverfront connections trails are going through that process, and so the DDA will likely need to play a role to help move those along. So a lot of capital projects that we're going to need to evaluate and understand timing of, and that's a lot of the work that we're doing right now. While we're doing that, of course, balancing some of our other programs and priorities around a welcoming and inclusive neighborhood. So we'll want to continue our programs for business support. Obviously, the ambassadors are a key component for DGRI and the DDA. The wayfinding system, implementation of that continues to roll out in phases. And then other work like that we do with disability advocates. Also continuing to work with the Downtown Neighbor Network and that important outreach that's happening. So the balance, I guess the point here is making sure that we have the right balance between capital intensive projects and our, I think, crucial programs for the neighborhood overall. And then lastly, we, I think, continue to recognize the value of events and making sure that we are being very active in terms of bringing people back into downtown, making sure our visitor numbers are up. We're just wrapping up World of Winter, which was a tremendous success this year. Trying to find ways to continue to lean into that. Of course, the Art Prize work is still going on, in addition to all the other programs and events that we have. So again, balancing the capital intensive work with the big ticket items with the activation and vibrancy. So no surprises there, hopefully, and we'll have more detail to share next month. Then wanted to kind of dive into a little bit of the numbers and where we know financials are and have been going. So looking back on our local tax increment, so sorry for the acronyms, but LTI or local tax, we've seen positive, steady growth continually for the past 10 years. This amounts to about a doubling of local tax in that 10-year period. We've averaged about 8% in that time. Expect that should continue. That said, from a budgeting standpoint, we're typically pretty conservative in what we show and have historically looked at a 1% increase just to be conservative and not understanding that there's economic uncertainty and things can change. I was speaking with Tricia a little bit earlier in the week, and we can evaluate and look at some scenarios for 1% as sort of a standard budget if we wanted to look at 2%, just to maybe give ourselves a little bit more runway or leeway. That's something we can look at and bring to you for consideration. So that's sort of an open question for you to think about. But that said, we expect to continue to see positive growth in the local tax and property taxes going forward. The other component of our regular funding financing is, of course, the non-tax fund. That has quite a bit more volatility associated with it. It is primarily the funds in that in the non-tax are primarily through parking revenue and land sales and transactions. So looking back over our 10-year period here, the big spikes there are associated with land sales and transactions. So think about Arena Place, Area 4 and 5, the expansion of the Studio Park land sale. So if you pull those out and just look at parking revenue, we've seen a little bit of fluctuation overall, but nothing too dramatic. This is just a point out for 23. This is only through the first 2 quarters of the year, so we're expecting to land a little bit closer to 500,000 here, but we'll see where that lands. So again, funding is strong. I think one thing that we will be looking at for non-tax is to shift some of the projects out of there into local tax, just to sort of help relieve some of the stress on that fund because it is a little more volatile. But overall, the financial picture looks healthy. A couple of other considerations, and then happy to open it up for questions, conversations. Obviously, we have quite a bit of committed obligations already on the books. Those are in the form of administration, debt service, gain sharing, et cetera. We want to understand partner capacity, particularly on some of those larger capital projects, and timing is critical as we think about the budget. And then, of course, understanding as much as we can around the overall economic conditions and what that's going to translate to in terms of labor, pricing, costs, all those things. And then just the last slide, just to put some more context into our committed obligations. This is showing what we're currently working through for fiscal year 23. These will continue, although an important thing to point out is the DeVos Place debt service payments, our final payment is in fiscal year 24. So in that 5-year priority plan, you will see that come off for the out years, which does open up a little bit of capacity for hopefully some of these bigger projects. Gain sharing, a reminder, we did increase that. It had been 10% for the first 5 years, so we're now up to 15%. We just got the numbers yesterday that'll go out, so we will be issuing $1.3 million in gain sharing rebates to our taxing units. And then, of course, our TIF reimbursement development support agreements. Those will continue on into the future. So that's sort of like quick, broad brushstrokes in terms of some of the things we're looking at and evaluating. I'm happy to take any questions now, offline, but that was my overview I wanted to give.
Just for me, reacting to the sort of your tax estimates, I would think in the near term, we could be a little more aggressive. I don't know if aggressive's the right word, but, and then as you get out into year, 3, 4, 5, that might be different. We could be much more conservative. But I do think if we're talking about the ensuing fiscal year, we could probably be a little more aggressive, knowing, where we are.
Yeah.
Roughly, what's kind of the comparison of how we've ended up compared to the 1% a year?
Average has been 8%.
Yeah. So,
Maybe we could open that up.
right. That's what I mean. I think we can be a little more aggressive. So, better than the other way around, right?
Sure, right. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
typically it's smart to be conservative
Right.
and be surprised.
But it is quite the gap. So, any other questions? I mean, yes.
What's our asset base left, or parcels of land that we still own?
We have a map we can share. It's primarily the west side dash lots. And then there's a few other slivers here and there. We own Pocket Park right in front of the bank that's changed names 5 different times in the past couple of years, but right at Ionia and Cherry there. Blue Bridge area, but again, primarily land holdings, the major ones are the west side dash lots.
Yeah, I think the non-tax fund, we probably need to be mindful that as we sell off sites, we lose parking revenue, so.
We do.
Yeah.
Which is,
It's a
has
good
been a
thing.
healthy
Yeah.
source of income over the years. Yeah. And those sites were always meant to be developed.
Correct. That's our core mission.
Right.
Correct. So it's not parking
No.
revenue, but Anything else? Go ahead.
As they're developed, I mean, a lot of downtown employees park their, students park their GRCC. I mean, we do move forward with plans for parking
True.
and not just development.
That's true.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Studio Park's a great example where, you know, those were surface parking lots that, you know, had added a significant amount of capacity with the ramp, but allowed for other development to happen. But yeah, I think all the development does look
And
at
it,
it through that.
in turn, increases the LTI,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep,
So-
right.
I have a question.
Yes,
In terms of planning for the future, do we anticipate any boundary changes for the DDA district?
Good question. I was going to mention a little bit of this in the executive director report. We are still planning to move forward with a DDA plan update. In terms of boundary expansion, we're not at this point thinking anything would be included. What it would mainly look at is an expansion of the tax increment capture areas. And get into the nuance a little bit is the area around 201 Market is within our boundary, but is not within our tax capture district. And so as we think about the riverfront redevelopment, wanting to expand that area, but it wouldn't actually change the boundary.
But
that
you
makes sense.
would change the expectation of capturing tax income?
Yes, yep. And that will, so we've talked a little bit about timing. We didn't want to overwhelm you with information for the next meeting, so we're thinking budget next month with a follow-up of the DDA plan conversation in May.
anything else? Yes,
For me, I think I would be interested in this, this has to do with budget and like what our minority business owner spend is, and if that's currently being tracked, and if not, maybe we could track it to measure it, to hopefully see an increase, whether it's contractors, just whatever. Photographers for events, all of those different things I think would be great. And then I'm thinking about program offerings. I was going to say product offerings, it kind of makes it sound like I'm selling insurance, but in this, and I know that it could be a later discussion, is thinking of, again, to reiterate the need for retention programs for small business. I know we talked about that, so not just the attraction, but how do we keep the businesses that are here. And then my other thought is when I look at the parking revenue, I know parking, there's an anticipated increase in parking fees that's on the table soon with the city, and I believe that really affects small businesses, especially those that are, say, 25 and less employees. And so I wonder in the future if there's some thought, some way to figure out a subsidy type of program. And again, that could be a partnership across the board with different entities. I know Ellis isn't interested in having any of those conversations, but I think that again affects the downtown area, especially the smaller businesses, the newer entrepreneurs who may not have a legacy business trying to attract employees. I know, for instance, for us, that's just a wash. Like we need to hire somebody who moved here from New York that don't expect to have a car because they're not gonna forward spending tons of money a month. So those are just things that I think, as we think about budget and we think about our downtown, that those have to be part of conversations.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we can certainly look at some of our existing spend to see how that tracks with some of the goals and priorities. Obviously, the retail innovation grant program will continue, and then we have our economic development team is looking at some of the retention aspects. I don't know on the parking rates, is there anything planned again? I know the ramps went up recently, but.
The city is still having those conversations.
No.
The city manager's budget comes out in April. No public direction, or that's not something. We spent some time talking to the local GR Commission about it, about a framework for what we look at.
Good. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, and I think too, we're mindful of that as we approach these projects, whether it's Lion Square or amphitheater construction, et cetera. So, once we can finally bid these
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder. I know on the river piece, our James Peacock, our economic opportunity organizer, has been organizing construction workers and making sure that minority women-owned business entrepreneurs are aware of some of those opportunities that are coming along. But yeah, I think those are all good points.
Anything else? All right. Look forward to the budget.
Yeah, and obviously if there are questions or anything comes up after the meeting, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Executive Director report.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of our work is focused on budget right now. A couple of other things to highlight. Just Air, so you might recall we helped fund some of those air sensors in and around downtown. They just received a grant, and so are expanding the program into the 49507 district. So they're adding in 7 new sensors within that zip code. In addition, they've also seen quite a bit of interest from other states and cities around the country. So a good story that we'll have Darren come back and kind of give you an overview, but that initial seed investment from the DDA has really helped to expand their work. So it's an exciting success story, and we'll be sure to share more. Then World of Winter has wrapped up officially. So last weekend was the final weekend. We have been tracking the numbers along, and we'll package all up into a report so you can kind of see how things played out. But overall, we saw a tremendous amount of visitor activity over those 2 months, and we're really happy with the overall impact of that event. So our team is still going to be out the next 2 weeks, breaking everything down. So you might still see some leftover installations, but nonetheless, the event is wrapped up. Then wanted to also mention that there will be an art prize announcement later today. I won't tell you what it is because I don't want to steal any thunder, but just watch the news, and I'm sure Mr. McVicker will be sharing some of that a little bit later in the afternoon. And then last but certainly not least, recognizing it's International Women's Day today, there is a march planned down at Rosa Parks at 12 p.m. DGRI is a sponsor of that, and hopefully, given the weather looks all right, we get a good turnout, and hopefully you guys can come join. That's all I got.
Awesome. Any questions for Tim? All right. Now it's time for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to step forward. All right, seeing none. Board member comments? Any great words of wisdom to share on this Wednesday? I have none either, sorry. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great Wednesday.
Yeah.
Tim, I sent you an email.
Okay.